Hello, my name is Ilze Duarte. I translate from Brazilian Portuguese to English. I will be reading a passage from Paisagem de Porcelana, Porcelain Landscape, by Brazilian author Claudia Nina. Her work still has to be translated into any language, so I'm very pleased to introduce her to an English language audience. Claudia Nina writes a lot about relationships, about the female condition, sometimes class, and issues of intersectionality. In this book, in particular, she discusses or explores, rather, violence against women. And it's not necessarily physical violence. Actually, for a great part of the story, the violence comes in the form of silence. This is a woman who is maybe in her 30s, and she is telling the story of when she was younger, a few years younger, and spent some time in the Netherlands in search of maybe adventure, maybe love. She herself wasn't very sure what she was searching for, but she goes through a period of alienation, loneliness, and when she gets involved with Ernest, a Dutch man, who turns out to be quite violent and initially expressing this violence through silence and alienation, she becomes even more lonely, even though she is with him, and her own identity starts to fall apart. She no longer knows who she is. And this is also a story about memory. This is memory after trauma, and it is fragmented and it is unreliable, but her feelings are absolutely clear and very well rendered by Claudia Nina. I will be reading from the beginning of the book, not the very first chapter, but the very beginning of the book. And I will start with a paragraph in Portuguese, and then that paragraph in English, and then the rest of the chapter in English. Again, this is Porcelain Landscape by Claudia Nina, and I am seeking a publisher for this book. Em país sem montanhas, as quedas são metafísicas. Uma pessoa pode afundar e ninguém vê o desaparecimento. Ninguém consegue despencar de colinas ou ladeiras. A queda é do chão para o chão. Desmorona-se em destroçamento de camadas internas, silenciosamente. Foi assim comigo a partir do momento em que pisei na nave Schiphol, e depois foi piorando à medida que Ernest enlouquecia. This reference is to the airport, which I understand is pronounced Schiphol, but she's playing with words here, and she probably pronounces it as Schiphol. This will become clear in the translation. In a flat country, falls are metaphysical. A person can sink into the ground and no one will notice she has disappeared. No one there can tumble from hills or steep roads. One falls from the ground to the ground. One crumbles into a wreckage of inner layers, silently. That is how it went from the moment I boarded the spaceship, Schiphol, and then it kept getting worse as Ernest started to go insane. The past is divided into 1,000 tiny pieces. The city horseshoe, the map labyrinth, the rings. This all feels like an absurd brain fog after all these years. The episodes come back to me in spurts. Between my breaths, the curtains slide open. The setting is fake. Like prisoners thrown out into the desert, assure you they have seen an oasis. So I too create images that are not true. Memory has no lie detector. The fogginess is normal in such cases. The feet freeze. How to go back then? The first fall I experienced was when I thought I was going to lose a finger. As soon as I arrived, the bright light of the long days looked blue to me. It was a pretty sight. The people scattered on the grass, riding their bicycles from a small town to another, the florists selling tulips and other flowers I had never seen. The Dutch swam in public parks and turned the lakes into private swimming pools. Their parties didn't belong to me, but they were parties. Gradually, the cold transformed the landscape. The water in the parks was again returned to the ducks. The wind was the reason why there were no tables out in the sidewalk cafes. The chairs and glasses would be blown away. The blue was reduced to a blurry spot at the end of each day. I remember when the first great frost assaulted me, and that wasn't even the worst that winter had to offer. When the illusory euphoria with Ernest had worn off, the falls followed. I fell into pits opening up in the ground. Long before a forest burns, the ants hasten back to their hideouts. They feel the ground warming up and know it is time to seek refuge. The worms wiggle into the underground. The butterflies flutter their wings manifold and disintegrate in the sky. The insects congregate in clouds of kinship and solidarity. The larger creatures have also learned the lessons of danger. When a storm is approaching, the bats fly to the highest, fullest tree branches and strike a pose to blend into the landscape. When the intense cold is about to come, the squirrels thicken their skin and turn into giant rodents. The moles hunker down in cozy burrows. On land as on sea, when a fishing boat looms in the distance, the smarter fish hear the sound and disappear in the ocean. There are those that hide in shells or pretend to be rocks. To run away in search of safety, who would know how? I didn't. Biologically, I was unable to awaken my body in time to protect myself from the enemy. I did the opposite. Instead of putting on fat and disguising myself as an animal to stay warm in cold weather, I dwindled to bones. I lost weight, lost my appetite on account of the weakness. Which started first, I can't remember. Before I knew it, I had shed the heft that it took to lift up my boot-wearing feet, and I had started to drag them. My joints started to groan, my bones creaked as I walked or sat down. Walking in the wind tires you out. Lightness isn't good for those who leave no footprints. I didn't learn the lessons of the moles, old ladies who hibernate out of wisdom. I made the decision to no longer ride my bicycle in the mud, and that was my only form of self-care. The romantic spirit of winter didn't reach my body at all. I must have experienced psychological hypothermia for a while, but I didn't know it. Once the warnings had ceased, I walked in the cold and got burned. I was slow to learn that it was getting cold on the inside in my small, fantastical, loony world rather than on the outside in that pitiful grayness where all the rest of humanity went on living happily. It wasn't hard to understand what made me leave Brazil. At 25, I was too young to demand explanations of myself. I wanted to go, and that was that. Amsterdam was a beautiful, seductive destination. Off I went, backpack on my back, alone, a visa stamped in my passport, some class I was planning to take, an inclination for a different life, and the rest is a fog.